My childhood friend fell in love with the school beauty in the second semester of senior high school. They hugged, kissed, and every day, under the guise of youth, did things that were not appropriate for our age. Since being with the school beauty, my childhood friend, who was known as a piano prodigy, never touched the piano again, and his grades plummeted. It was not until my childhood friend gave up his future and went to a hotel with the school beauty to celebrate their 100-day anniversary. I liked him. I didn't want to see him with someone else. And I was even more reluctant to see him miss his life's dream. So, under the questioning of his parents, I told the truth. My childhood friend was taken abroad to study, and the school beauty later married a coal boss and died from domestic violence. Later, my childhood friend returned to the country as a pianist, actively courted me, and married me. But after marriage, he tortured me day and night until I died. All of this is what you owe me, and TIWA. When I opened my eyes again, I was back to the moment when the school beauty first confessed to my childhood friend. I clapped beside them and said, "Wow, you two are so well matched." It was the 100-day oath-taking ceremony for the college entrance examination in senior high school. Melvin stood on the podium with a bouquet of flowers in his hands. Showing off, he had a tall and slender figure, with three-dimensional features. His thick hair was dyed a cool jet black color. It looked black in normal light, but under the sunlight, it had a dazzling sheen. His eyes were affectionate, and his attitude was unrestrained and arrogant. All the teachers and students in the school were shocked by his behavior. The students below the steps were silent for a moment. My voice was not loud, but it clearly reached Melvin's ears. He was slightly surprised. The moment our eyes met, he quickly turned his gaze away. He continued to stare at TIWA affectionately. "I like you. Will you be with me?" Melvin didn't mention TIWA's name in his confession, but those who were familiar with him knew who he was referring to. TIWA, standing in the front of the stage, covered her mouth with her slender fingers, and a shy blush appeared on her fair face. She had a high ponytail, and she made the ordinary school uniform look pretty and charming. Her beautiful big eyes met Melvin's, showing a look of touch and admiration. Before she could answer, the dean let out a low sigh. Jubapi, whose belly was as big as that of a pregnant woman, led a group of teachers and rushed over here in a hurry. "Melvin, come down here right now." All of this happened before the oath-taking ceremony. The students of each class had just gathered on the playground, and the school leaders hadn't stepped onto the podium yet. This was the exact time Melvin chose. In my previous life, I was stupid enough to think that Melvin was confessing to me. After all, Melvin and I grew up together, and our relationship had always been very good. My liking for him was also well known. The day before the oath-taking ceremony, Melvin asked me what kind of confession girls generally liked the most. What kind of confession could touch a girl's heart the most? I was so excited that I told him with great enthusiasm that girls definitely liked a romantic and grand confession. It would be best to announce, "I love you," in front of the whole world. In this way, heading fulfill what say. It's like making a public declaration, and girls won't be able to refuse. Oh, I see. Melvin nodded thoughtfully. The next day, he made a high-profile confession. The plot was the same in my previous life. The dean led a group of teachers and rushed over. And I, in order to let Melvin's confession continue, actually took the initiative to stand in front of the dean. In the end, both Melvin and I were punished to write a self-criticism. But Melvin got what he wanted and got together with TIWA. I was devastated and greatly shocked. My already bottom-ranked grades got even worse. Finally, having fulfilled with my family spending a lot of money, I got into a low-tier undergraduate school. As for why I didn't go abroad, it was mainly because my foreign language was too poor to pass the TOEFL or IELTS. But even so, I was still infatuated with Melvin. Melvin also knew this very well, so he used me many times. Even at this moment, he was doing the same. "Loy, help me stop them," Melvin shouted from the stage. Jubapi was coming with great momentum, and TIWA still hadn't given him an answer at this moment. He was so anxious that he was running around in circles. "Boss, do you need help?" My few lackeys immediately gathered around when they heard Melvin's words. I had always been obedient to Melvin's words. So my lackeys were the same. I smiled and stood still. Stop them? Why should I stop them? I was just a student. How could I go against the teachers? In my previous life, I was given a demerit and had to write a self-criticism just because of this. The result was that even if I did nothing, Melvin would still be with TIWA. Except for that one sentence at the beginning. I didn't do anything extra. I was so obedient that I didn't seem like the leader of the school's tough girls. Yes. Loy, because my family was rich, had always been domineering in school. Going against the teachers was a common thing. At this moment, only I could stop the teachers and buy time for Melvin. Loy, why don't you go and stop them? Your childhood friend Melvin is about to be caught by Director Zhu. Blair, a classmate of mine, said with schadenfreude. Blair was the study committee member of the class. She had excellent grades. But her family was of ordinary means. And she had an ordinary appearance. She had always can't stand my unrestrained and ostentatious behavior. What she liked to see the most was me making a fool of myself. A faint smile always hung on my face. I looked straight ahead and didn't say anything. What a joke. I was a reborn 28-year-old with a mature soul. How could I be provoked by the words of this little brat? Seeing that I ignored her, Blair didn't provoke me anymore and turned her gaze to the stage. After shouting that sentence, Melvin looked at TIWA expectantly. It was not until Zhu Boppy walked onto the stage that he reacted. First, he looked at me in disbelief, as if shocked that I didn't help him stop the teachers and buy time. Melvin, you're so bold. This is the 100-day oath-taking ceremony for the college entrance examination. How dare you make a public confession and cause trouble here? Zhu Boppy was very angry. His eyes wide and in anger. And he grabbed Melvin's collar and dragged him down. The originally passionate 100-day oath-taking ceremony turned into a farce. The high-spirited fighting spirit of the students dissipated by more than half. Eventually, the 100-day oath-taking ceremony ended hastily. Back in the class, I gradually calmed down. I was reborn. I pinched Li Tao, one of my lackeys, so hard that his arm turned red. His pig-like scream clearly reached my ears. This wasn't a dream. I couldn't sleep. I was back in this classroom again. My ruined life actually had a chance to start over. I was overjoyed in my heart. And my body was slightly trembling. Loy, what's wrong with you? My friend Lin Jia looked at me worriedly. I had always been domineering. Because I once bullied the classmates who bullied her. She became one of my few true friends. I'm fine. I showed a smile. In my previous life, I had been chasing Melvin all the time. I didn't want to see him with TIWA. So I told his parents about it. He and TIWA broke up. I had long neglected my studies because of chasing him for so many years. If it weren't for my family having some money, my life would have been ruined long ago. After fooling around in college for a few years, I went home to inherit the family business. When my career was booming, Melvin came back. He showed his love crazily. And I quickly fell for it. As a result, everything was Melvin's revenge. He blamed me for TIWA's death and tortured me day and night. Unknowingly, hadn't felt my own sasham. He murdered my parents, embezzled my family business, and carefully designed a traffic accident. After my death, I was unwilling, and my soul lingered and refused to leave. I watched as the police found Melvin, but Melvin took out a divorce agreement and, on the grounds that we were already divorced, refused to claim my body for burial. Fortunately, having fulfilled Lay, God had mercy on me and let me be reborn back to the age of 18. This year, everything had not started yet. And everything had a chance to start over. Class is starting. Class is starting. Zhu Boppy is coming. As the bell rang, the originally noisy classroom became quiet in an instant. Zhu Boppy was the dean and also the head teacher of our class. He wore thick glasses and had an ice-cold expression that never changed, looking solemn and serious. Following him into the classroom was a transfer student. A boy who was about 1.85 meters tall but extremely thin. Today, a transfer student has come to our class. This is the one beside me. His name is Gunnar. At this moment in my previous life, I was being punished to write a self-criticism in the teacher's office. I didn't know what this class was about at all. After that, my mind was full of Melvin. And I had never cared about this unknown transfer student. Let's give him a round of applause. Hearing the name Gunnar, I immediately looked up. The boy in front of me was wearing a brand new school uniform, with a faint expression on his face. Except for his fair skin and tall and thin figure, there was almost nothing special about him. He looked very ordinary. I was sure that we should have no intersection. But his name was deeply engraved in my memory. The police officer who claimed my body in my previous life. After being killed by Melvin, my body lay in the cold funeral parlor. And no one cared about it for months. Finally, Kevin fulfilled my Gunnar appeared. He had just been transferred to an city. Originally, Heaven fulfilled my all of this had nothing to do with him. But he took the initiative to take over this case and handle my funeral affairs. Looking at the name Gunnar on the lead police officer, I was very puzzled. Student Gunnar, please introduce yourself. Jubapi's voice was rarely a bit gentle. I also stared intently at Gunnar on the podium. So Gunnar was my high school classmate. But this wasn't a reason for him to take the initiative to claim my body. As an excellent criminal police officer, taking charge of such a trivial matter really didn't make sense. Gunnar on the stage had a faint expression. And his voice was also faint. Hello, everyone. My name is Gunnar. Simple and straightforward. Not a single extra word. The classmates in the class didn't show much expectation either. Looking uninterested. Boss. What are you looking at? Li Tao leaned over and asked. Hearing this, Lin Jia also turned around to look at me. I ignored their doubts and directly took the lead in clapping my hands. Welcome the new classmate. Yes, everyone. Welcome. Jubapi said. A sparse round of applause rang out in the class, which was slightly awkward and quiet. Gunnar looked at me with a bit of doubt, just meeting my burning gaze. I gave him a bright smile without any hesitation. Gunnar. Thank you. I silently thanked him in my heart. Gunnar. You can sit. Jubapi didn't waste any time. After a brief introduction, his eyes swept around the class. Teacher. I have an empty seat here. I quietly kicked Li Tao and told him to move to the other side. Li Tao looked incredibly aggrieved and whispered. Boss. It's my turn to be your desk mate this week. Cut the crap and sit aside. With the same warm expression on my face, I spat out a few words through gritted teeth that only Li Tao could hear. Then you can be desk mates with Loi for now. After looking around, the stingy teacher nodded to Gunnar. Obviously, having Sai. The stingy teacher wasn't satisfied with this arrangement. But the farce at the oath-taking ceremony in the morning had already given him a headache. So he didn't bother to make a more careful arrangement for the time being. I looked at the newcomer Gunnar with curiosity. He was tall. And the huge school bag of a high school student seemed insignificant in front of him. He came to his seat, took out a pack of tissues, and carefully wiped the desk and chair before sitting down. I watched him wipe the desktop bit by bit and then arrange his books neatly. Filled with curiosity. Hello, new desk mate. My name is Loi. I greeted him friendly. The teacher has said it. Gunnar's tone was flat, without a single ripple. He's really a conversation killer. How am I supposed to respond? Just when I was feeling embarrassed, the stingy teacher spoke again. Okay, class begins now. The stingy teacher taught math and always emphasized efficiency. He quickly got into the teaching state. Everyone, open the mock exam papers from a few days ago. In this class, we'll analyze the papers. No one ever dared to play Ricks in the stingy teacher's class. And I was no exception. I opened my school bag, found the crumpled paper, and spread it out on the desk. New classmate. You don't have the paper, right? Look at mine. I took the initiative to put the paper in the middle of the desk again in a friendly way. But the next second, I regretted it. I was so focused on showing off that I completely forgot how bad my grades were in Senior 3. Especially in such an abstruse subject as math. looking at the paper full of red crosses. I smiled awkwardly. I didn't take this exam. Heh. The moment Gunnar, who had always had a calm expression, saw the paper, his brows furrowed, and an incredible shock appeared in his eyes. He opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something, but finally held back. I, who had originally intended to strike up a conversation, felt so embarrassed that I wanted to find a hole to crawl into. Why was I so bad in my previous life? I only got 25 points out of 150 on this test paper. And they were all from guessing the multiple choice questions. I got all the fill in the blank and big questions wrong. No, since I've been reborn, I can't waste time and neglect my studies like this anymore. But it seems that there's only one semester left until the college entrance examination. Can I do it? I was thinking critically in my mind. But the stingy teacher's voice reached my ears word for word. To my surprise, the schoolwork that was once as difficult as climbing to the sky, I actually remembered while listening absent-mindedly this time. Before I knew it, the stingy teacher had finished explaining the multiple choice questions. I looked at the questions that I didn't understand at all before, and suddenly remembered how to solve them. My mood during this class was as exciting as a roller coaster ride. I understand, I exclaimed excitedly. The classroom, which had been quiet with only the stingy teacher's voice echoing, suddenly became noisy. Loy, what do you understand? The stingy teacher was very dissatisfied with my sudden interruption. He stared at me seriously. Did you understand what I taught in class? You just shouted like that. I smiled awkwardly and was about to say that I understood his class when the class bell rang. The words that were originally on my lips turned into, "Sorry, teacher." The stingy teacher glared at me and then started to assign homework. Everyone, copy the wrong questions on this paper 5 times and hand them in tomorrow. Melvin returned to the classroom after the first class ended. As soon as he came back, he was surrounded by a group of boys and girls in the class. Melvin, you're amazing. You actually dared to confess in public at the oath-taking ceremony. I admire you. I don't have the guts to do such a heroic act. So, who did you confess to? Did she agree to you? A smile appeared on Melvin's face. And he didn't show any shame after being punished. That's for sure. As he said this, he walked up to me, put away his smile, and said, Loy, why didn't you stop the stingy teacher for me just now? I was so immersed in my great joy that I didn't react to what he meant for a moment. I asked you to stop the stingy teacher. You really disappoint me. I thought you were my good friend. A disappointed look appeared on Melvin's face. In my previous life, I was most afraid of him showing such an expression to me. I liked him and tried my best to please him, hoping to have a place in his heart. But at this moment, I was no longer the old me. I put down the paper in my hand, leaned back in my chair, and looked at him with a faint smile. Melvin, you overestimate me. How could I stop teachers you? The most I could do was clap for you. Humph. Why can't you do it? Loy, you can call your lackeys together, and then you can stop him. Melvin glanced at Li Tao and said in a matter-of-fact tone, Sorry, can't do it. I shrugged my shoulders and started to look down at the paper. Too lazy to pay attention to him anymore. Time is precious. And I won't look at Melvin even one more time. Melvin still wouldn't let me go and continued, Loy, don't think I don't know what you're thinking. You want to ruin my confession. But don't even think about it. TIWA has already agreed to be with me. Oh, and congratulations. I replied lazily. After Melvin left, Blair came. She stood in front of me, looking down at me haughtily. Oh, the little delinquent can also study. This is really rare. She was right. In my previous life, I was indeed a school bully. A little delinquent. So I wasn't angry. I didn't even look up and continued to look at my book. I found that after being reborn, my memory has improved significantly. Almost any knowledge I've seen once, I can remember instantly. My comprehension ability has also changed tremendously. The theoretical knowledge that was originally obscure and difficult to understand, I can understand after listening to it once. So I'm now frantically making up for the 3 years of wasted studies. Stop looking. Your Melvin is already with the school beauty. You still have the mood to read? Are you so stimulated that you've gone crazy? I closed the book and looked up at her. You're wrong. He's not my Melvin. I have nothing to do with him. Seeing that I wasn't angry, Blair snorted and left. After driving away the annoying flies, I buried myself in my studies again. Loy, are you really studying? Lin Jia also looked at me in confusion, turned around, and lay on my desk, tilting her head to look at me. Yeah, boss. Why don't you let me be your desk mate anymore? Li Dao scratched his head, looking pitifully aggrieved, and glared at Gunnar discontentedly. Yes. From today on, I, Loy, officially start studying. I always keep my word. In the following days, I almost studied seriously every day. I originally thought that after being reborn, I would have no more interaction with Melvin. But some people just come to me on their own initiative. Loy, go get me 2 servings of food at noon. Melvin walked up to my desk and threw 2 lunch boxes to me. I want sweet and sour pork ribs from the 3rd window on the left of the 2nd floor, spicy prawns from the 5th window, and abalone and chicken sauce from the 3rd floor. The 2 lunch boxes were a couple set. I bought them for Melvin when I traveled to Japan. I originally planned to use the couple's lunch boxes with Melvin, but Melvin didn't want to. He said the lunch boxes were too flashy, and he didn't want to use them. And now he doesn't think they're flashy and even asks me to get food for him. I was almost made to laugh by Melvin's actions. Li Tao. I called out. Here, boss. I'll go get it for you. I'll definitely complete the task. Li Tao nimbly jumped in front of me, grabbed the 2 lunch boxes, and was about to get up. Stop. I haven't even spoken yet. What are you in such a hurry for? I stopped Li Tao. Li Tao immediately turned back when he heard my words, and his movements were as smooth as flowing clouds and water. Throw these 2 annoying things away for me. They're disturbing my study. Huh? What? Li Tao was stunned after hearing this and looked at me uncertainly. Melvin was equally shocked. His expression changed from haughty to satisfied and then to shocked in almost an instant. Can't you understand what I said? Go throw them away now. Okay. Right away. Li Dao obediently threw the 2 couples' lunch boxes into the trash can. Loy, hadn't fulfilled Loy Bsap. You actually threw away my lunch boxes. Melvin shouted angrily. Were those your lunch boxes? I thought they were trash. My tone was casual, and I didn't care at all about Melvin's anger. Melvin rushed to the trash can in a huff, picked up the lunch boxes again, and then ran out. Boss. Melvin seems to be angry. Li Tao whispered beside me. Yeah. Definitely. He is angry. Boss. Aren't you worried? Worried about what? If he's angry, he won't talk to you anymore. That's just right. I think he's annoying. He's in a relationship but still asks me to do things for him. He's so full of himself. Li Tao was shocked again. Melvin and I are neighbors. His parents are both music teachers and have always wanted to train him to be a pianist since he was a child. My family is in business, and my family conditions are superior. I've been infatuated with Melvin since I was a child. Our parents on both sides were also happy to see our relationship develop. Before I was 18 in my previous life, I thought Melvin and I were a match made in heaven. I did a lot of stupid things to please him. It wasn't until Melvin confessed to TIWA that I realized that the person Melvin had always liked was not me. Since that's the case, I'm willing to let it go. After being reborn, I don't want to have any connection with Melvin anymore. And I definitely won't spoil him or do anything for him. If there really is any connection, I'm really curious about my new desk mate. Gunnar talks very little. After getting along for a few days, if I don't take the initiative to talk to him, he almost never opens his mouth. Facing the noise and commotion around me, he also keeps silent and tries to minimize his presence. Li Tao, who originally thought he had fallen out of favor, gradually stopped paying attention to him. I became more and more curious. How could such a taciturn and unassuming boy become an outstanding criminal policeman? Hey, how do I solve this problem? Can you explain it to me? I pointed to a wrong question on the test paper. In fact, I already knew how to solve this problem. But I only knew the solution the teacher taught. These days, I've asked Gunnar many questions. I found that he's really super smart. Almost a genius. He can always explain various solutions to me, in a simple and profound way. And his solutions are even more ingenious than those of the stingy teacher. I like his solutions more than the teacher's. Class is over. I'm going to have lunch. Gunnar glanced at the question and refused emotionlessly. Come on. The cafeteria is so crowded. Let's just eat in the classroom. I smiled and opened the lunch just delivered by our housekeeper. It was delicate and delicious. I placed the dishes one by one on the desk. After observing him several times, I found out why Gunnar was so thin. His family situation must not be very good. Although he eats on time every meal, he eats very little. And it's almost always plain rice porridge. Lacking in nutrition. Gunnar looked at the delicate plates on the desk. His Adam's apple bobbing. However, he still refused in a calm tone. No need. I'll go to the cafeteria to eat. No way. I've already prepared it. I specifically asked our housekeeper to prepare enough for 2 people. I'm treating you to a meal. And in return, you help me with my studies. I grabbed Gunnar's arm. His arm was so thin that I could barely feel any flesh. In my mind, the image of Gunnar I saw in my previous life as a soul involuntarily emerged. He was tall and muscular. Under my overbearing and persistent insistence, Gunnar compromised. Okay. Then let's go over the questions first. Let's eat first. It's all set up. And it'll be troublesome to put it away. Gunnar ate very gracefully. And his every move was unexpectedly pleasing to the eye. His ordinary appearance exuded an outstanding temperament. Since then, I would have lunch with Gunnar every noon. And then, for half an hour after the meal, he would explain questions to me. I thought I had made a great deal by getting a free tutor in exchange for a meal. Ever since Gunnar came, my grades have been advancing by leaps and bounds. In the second mock exam after the start of the semester, all my subjects passed for the first time. Loy, you've been performing well recently. Keep it up. Jubapi praised me by name. Blair, the study committee member, looked disbelieving. After getting the test papers, she repeatedly flipped through mine several times. I don't believe it. The second to last student actually passed. I snatched the test paper from her hands. What? Can't poor students make progress? Tell the truth. Did you copy from Gunnar? Blair stared at me intently, the thick lenses of her glasses reflecting light. Gunnar, this transfer student, was like a dark horse. He directly took the first place, leaving the original first-ranked student 20 points behind. The moment the scores came out, the classmates understood why Jubapi had a particularly different attitude towards him. I rolled my eyes at Blair and didn't bother to respond to her. Blair and Tiwa were good friends. She had always disliked me because I was childhood friends with Melvin. She was a good student in the eyes of the teachers. And I hadn't really clashed with her much. As a 28-year-old with a mature soul, I wasn't going to heckle with these kids. However, Blair didn't let me go. In Jubapi's class the next day, she stood up voluntarily. Teacher, several students haven't handed in the homework assigned yesterday. Didn't hand it in? Which ones? Jubapi's expression was solemn, and his serious gaze swept over everyone. Loy, Li Tao, Liu Fei. Blair reported several names. She emphasized my name especially when she said it. Loy, I just praised you yesterday. And today you're back to your old ways? Jubapi turned his gaze to me. As soon as I heard Blair speak, I knew it was no good. And sure enough, here it came. I was certain that I had handed in my homework. Now that Blair said I didn't, it could only mean that she had hidden my homework. Teacher, I handed it in. If it's not there, someone must have hidden my homework. I looked at Blair with a calm gaze but accidentally met Melvin, her desk mate. Melvin's eyes dodged, which was different from his usual look of disgust. I immediately understood. Teacher, she's lying. I didn't do that. I'm willing to be checked. Blair denied loudly, her tone resolute. Some people not only don't hand in their homework but also lie and frame others. Loy, and then fulfilled my obsession. Did you do your homework or not? Bobby had always favored the top-performing study committee member. He frowned and looked at me. If you're willing to be checked, then let's check, I said, still in a calm tone. However, I don't want to check you. I want to check your desk mate. As soon as I said this, both of their expressions turned panicked. Loy. You're going too far. You didn't do your homework. Framed me. And now you're framing Melvin. Blair rebuked loudly. I ignored her and turned to Bobby. Teacher. I'm sure my homework is in Melvin's desk. It's not very appropriate to rummage through someone's desk. So Bobby looked hesitant. Just then, Gunnar spoke up. Teacher. I can testify that I saw Loy hand in her homework this morning. Then let's check. Bobby said. Bobby walked to Melvin's desk and asked Melvin to open his school bag. This search not only found my homework but also a lot of evidence of Melvin and TIWA's relationship. In Melvin's school bag, there were many intimate photos of him and TIWA. Selfies of them cheek to cheek were nothing. What was more exaggerated was that there were selfies of them kissing. For senior high school students, the scale was quite astonishing. What awaited Melvin? Of course, was Bobby's anger. When those photos were seen, the whole class was in an uproar. Everyone knew that Melvin and TIWA were together. But no one knew they were so bold. The only one who wasn't surprised was me. In my previous life, I had seen not only the photos but also the real-life scenes. However, after being reborn, I was fully focused on my studies and didn't pay attention to their affairs anymore. The scenes of them embracing in the rain, having a wall kiss in the corridor, and kissing in the toilet, were like frames of a movie engraved in my mind from my previous life. Amidst the uproar screams, I walked to Melvin's desk and took out my homework from a pile of photos. Melvin was already pale with fear. He stared at me angrily. It seemed that he was blaming me for everything again. I smiled. Well, this was what he was good at. Before he was taken away by Bobby, I whispered in his ear. This is what you get for helping Blair frame me. You brought it on yourself. In response, I got Melvin's fierce glare. However, I didn't take it to heart. I was surprisingly calm and said, Teacher, this is my homework. I handed the homework to Bobby personally. When Bobby saw my homework, his face looked a bit awkward. Soon, he found a place to vent his embarrassment. Melvin, come out with me. Melvin was taken away again. This time, there was solid evidence. It was no longer just his random act of causing trouble. For senior high school students to date, their parents would be called. The female-led TIWA was also taken away. TIWA was not in my class, but I was also quite familiar with her. Her academic performance was comparable to mine before, but her beautiful face made everyone treat her with extra tolerance and preferential treatment. Many times when she made mistakes, while ordinary students would be punished to stand and write self-criticisms, she would only be gently reprimanded a few times. Almost no teacher was not lenient towards her, except for Bobby. Bobby was not only the head teacher of our class but also the grade dean. Every time a student was caught dating, it would definitely be handed over to him for handling. This time, since it was a student from his own class, it was no exception. I heard that both Melvin and TIWA had their parents called. I didn't know the specific process, but I was sure they didn't break up. On my way home, Melvin stopped me. Loy, you're so vicious. Melvin said this angrily. I didn't bother to respond and wanted to walk around him, but Melvin blocked me firmly. I know you like me, but I don't like you. You don't need to use such means to break up me and TIWA. Do you know how cheap you look? Before, I still considered you a friend, but you've hurt TIWA. Loy, you're unforgivable. From now on, we're breaking up. We're no longer friends. I crossed my arms and looked at Melvin's malicious words without any emotional fluctuations. He might have thought his words could hurt me, but I had seen his terrifying face before. What were these malicious words compared to that? Fine. Melvin, I also have something to say to you. Listen carefully. Loy, Don't like you. And I have no intention of interfering in whether you're with TIWA or Nana. Regarding what happened today. If you hadn't deliberately framed me, how could you have brought trouble upon yourself? I advise you to keep a low profile. After saying that, I turned around and left. I didn't want to look at Melvin's hateful face for another second. Since then, Melvin and I completely became strangers. Lin Jiajia and Li Tao wanted to say something to me several times but held back, as if they wanted to ask if I really didn't like Melvin anymore. I ignored them. Every day, I just kept studying, reciting, and doing exercises. Fortunately, heading fulfilledly, I have an amazing memory. I can remember knowledge just by looking at it once, while others need to review it many times. After a few months, I had gone through all the high school knowledge in my mind. My grades gradually improved from the bottom to the top few in the grade. It took the classmates several months to go from disbelief to shock and finally to acceptance. Blair could no longer casually frame me for not handing in my homework. I would occasionally hear the teachers talking to each other. There are indeed rare cases of geniuses suddenly becoming enlightened. Student Loy is smart, but she just didn't focus on her studies before. It was Director Zhu's wise decision to recruit Gunnar, this treasure of a student. Since he came, Loy has been delving into her studies. Director Zhu is really good at teaching. Loy is a student in Director Zhu's class. Only Director Zhu could teach such a student. Zhu Babi quite enjoyed this flattery. Unconsciously, having cosplayed, I became as famous as Gunnar. And we became the two most promising students in Zhu Babi's eyes. The stingy teacher's look at me had changed from initial disregard to anticipation. I took all this lightly and wasn't happy because of the stingy teacher's change in attitude. It's all about self-interest. This is the reality. At the same time, Melvin and TIWA, who were as well known and sensational as me in the senior 3 grade, also caught people's attention. The two of them had been keeping a low profile for a while since they were called to the office with their parents. As the school beauty and the piano prince, every move of theirs attracted the attention of others. On the last day of the 100-day countdown to the college entrance examination, which was also the 100-day anniversary of Melvin and TIWA's relationship, they went to a hotel to open a room. In the adult world, this might not be a big deal, but for senior 3 students on the verge of the college entrance examination, it was an astonishing act. The school teachers and the parents of both Melvin and TIWA rushed to the hotel and brought them back. This scandal quickly spread throughout the school. I heard that Melvin gave up his future in the art exam for TIWA. He's really affectionate. What a pity. His piano skills were once praised by top-notch masters. He was said to have a promising future. I heard that Melvin shouted that he didn't regret it when he was taken away. What's the use of not regretting? His parents are going to send him abroad. They'll still break up anyway. After being reborn, some things that were supposed to happen still occurred. I stopped the pen in my hand, feeling a bit dazed. An idea gradually emerged in my mind. Melvin must not be allowed to go abroad. How could he deserve that lofty honor in the future? What's wrong? Gunnar noticed my distraction with great care. Over this semester, Gunnar, who was a stranger in my previous life, had become my good friend. I found that he was actually a boy with a cold exterior but a warm heart, and full of integrity. On the surface, he seemed indifferent to everything, but in fact, he was kind-hearted and had his own principles. This was the fundamental reason why he would collect my body in my previous life. As I delved deeper into my studies, we had no secrets from each other. Li Tao and Lin Jiajia suspected that I had a new crush. But how could that be possible? With the 28-year-old soul. When I look at the 18-year-old Gunnar, I just think of him as a child. Nothing. I'm thinking about which school to apply to for the college entrance examination. I propped my cheek with one hand, pretending to be thinking. Which school do you want to go to? Hearing my words, Gunnar's eyes lit up for a moment. Then his gaze became slightly solemn, and he stared fixedly at me. I haven't decided yet. Where do you want to go? I asked him in return. In my previous life, I really knew nothing about Gunnar's memories. I want to go to the National University of Defense Technology, Gunnar said slowly. No wonder he would eventually become a criminal policeman. Gunner's goal had always been firm. The college entrance examination arrived in a flash. When I confidently finished writing the last English composition, I felt a sense of relaxation as if I had lived 2 lifetimes. The previous life full of torment and the day and night preparation for the college entrance examination finally came to an end at this moment. Like in the previous life, Melvin didn't take the college entrance examination. However, he didn't go abroad either. At the graduation party, some classmates still brought up the topic of him. Have you heard? Melvin and TIWA eloped. Eloped? Didn't they say Melvin was going abroad? That's not true. The night before Melvin was supposed to go abroad, he drugged his parents, stole money from home, and ran away with TIWA. Really? Where could they run to? Melvin's parents were almost driven crazy. They even went to TIWA's house to ask for her. TIWA's family is poor, and her father is a gambler who doesn't care about her anymore. By the way, Blair, you're TIWA's best friend. And Melvin was your desk mate. Do you know about this? Blair listened to the classmates' conversation without saying a word. Just because she didn't speak didn't mean she didn't know. It was she who facilitated TIWA and Melvin's acquaintance and relationship. She also contributed to this elopement. I had written down Melvin's whereabouts and time on a piece of paper in Melvin's name in advance. Informed her. And then asked her to help with the connection. Facing the classmates' questions, Blair smiled and said, "They're in a free relationship. Now that the college entrance examination is over, it can't be considered elopement. Right?" The next time I heard news about Melvin was when I received the college admission notice. I successfully got admitted to a top 10 university in the country located in Jing City. Just when my family was holding a grand celebration for my enrollment, Melvin was brought back by his parents. Our two families were neighbors. In contrast to the joy in my family, Melvin's family seemed desolate and miserable. I was standing at the door with my parents to welcome guests when I happened to see Melvin being led home by his parents in a slovenly state. Melvin's right arm was wrapped in a bandage, seemingly injured. "Mr. Melvin's father, would you like to come and have a drink?" My father greeted him warmly. "It's good that the child has been found. As long as he's safe." Melvin's parents waved their hands awkwardly and led Melvin into the house in a dejected manner. Alas! I put so much effort into Melvin back then. It's a pity that he still went astray. The stingy teacher was also invited by my parents as an honored guest. He couldn't hold his liquor well. At the banquet, he soon started to talk non-stop. People who have drunk alcohol are always talkative, and the stingy teacher was no exception. He seemed to know a great deal about Melvin's affairs. Taking advantage of the alcohol, he blurted out everything. "Melvin is a student with high artistic talent. I originally thought about training him and sending him to the Central Academy of Fine Arts. But then he fell in love. How many times have I tried to persuade him? My mouth was parched. But he just wouldn't listen. What happened in the end? They eloped. The money they brought with them was stolen. And then he tried to steal from others. So he got his hand broken. Alas, having fulfilled my desire. Such a promising art talent is ruined." The stingy teacher was still rambling on. But I didn't have the heart to listen anymore. Melvin's hand was broken. That's great. This was one of the few good news since I was reborn. At the end of the summer vacation, I smoothly went to the university in Jing City to study. In the following years, I completed a combined master's and doctoral program, completely getting rid of my previous life's fate. My family's business grew bigger and bigger. With the memories of my previous life, I asked my parents to invest in several potential fields. As for Melvin, since being brought back by his parents, he still wouldn't give up. His mind was full of TIWA. In the end, his parents fulfilled his wish and spent 800 yuan as a bride price to marry TIWA for him. TIWA's father accepted the 800 yuan and gave his daughter to Melvin's family. But the matter didn't end there. TIWA's father was a gambler. After getting a taste of the sweet taste once, he wanted more money. Although Melvin's family had some assets, they were just teachers. Facing TIWA's father's exorbitant demands, they really couldn't afford to pay. So TIWA's father incited his daughter to divorce and marry a coal mine boss. Melvin, who had become disabled, had long lost his glory from school, and TIWA also grew tired of him. Lured by money, TIWA readily agreed to her father's suggestion and divorced Melvin. The next time I saw Melvin was the last time I returned to In City. Since I went to study in Jing City, and my family's business grew bigger, I rarely came back. Melvin was wearing a tattered jacket, with a bearded and haggard face. If he hadn't pushed open the courtyard door and come out of his house, I really might not have recognized him. In my memory, Melvin was either a young and innocent boy or a radiant person. When had he ever been so embarrassed? When he saw me, he was also shocked, and then his face showed joy. Loy. The voice was still the same as in my memory, but it had shed its youthfulness and turned into the devil in my previous life. I unconsciously took a step back. The daily torture in my previous life was deeply engraved in my bones. I could never forget it. Loy. It's me, heaven fulfilled my obsession. Melvin. Don't you recognize me? Seeing me step back, Melvin took a few steps forward. Having lived 2 lifetimes, I was no longer the person who would kick someone when they were down or mock them with words. At this moment, I just wanted to escape. So I raised my feet and wanted to leave. But Melvin wouldn't let me go. He chased closely after me. Loy. I was wrong. You're the best. I regret it now. Can you forgive me? I found that you're the one most worthy of my love. TIWA. That bitch is a whore. I heard that your family moved to Jing City. Why did you come back? Is it to see me? Do you still like me? You must like me, right? I'll be with you right now. Although Melvin's arm was disabled, his legs were fine. He caught up with me in a few steps, and his dirty hand grabbed my clothes. He desperately pulled me towards him. Loy. Listen to me. Just then, a figure flashed quickly. Before I could see the face clearly, a kick landed on Melvin's chest. Melvin fell backward, and I was pulled and also fell towards the ground. Seeing that I was about to fall, I closed my eyes in fear. The next second, I fell into a warm embrace. A familiar and reassuring voice came from above my head. Loy. Long time no see. I looked up and saw that it was Gunnar. The one I saw with my soul in my previous life. His handsome face was smiling, and his eyes were bright. An inexplicable joy spread from the bottom of my heart. This strange yet familiar man. He was another purpose for my return this time. Since the end of high school, Gunnar had disappeared. I returned to In City with the memories of my previous life, with a glimmer of hope. Sure enough, I met him. The corners of my mouth unconsciously turned up, and I replied, long time no see. I was so immersed in the joy of reunion that I was distracted for a moment. Melvin got up from the ground and stared at us angrily. Loy. You betrayed me too. His words stopped abruptly. A runaway car suddenly appeared and crashed straight into Melvin. Melvin died on the spot. I don't know if it was retribution, but his way of death was actually the same as mine in my previous life. The difference was that Melvin had someone to collect his body. His parents rushed over crying when they heard the news. Melvin's body was smashed to pieces, and the scene was bloody and terrifying. Gunnar reached out to cover my eyes and hugged me into his arms. Don't look. Don't be afraid. I'm here. I leaned against his chest, listening to his strong heartbeat, and suddenly I felt no fear at all. Perhaps there was a predestined arrangement. Melvin's death was also destined, and my life was just beginning.